Educational Communications and this station present Environmental Directions with Nancy Perlman. On this series, we explore the effects of human influence on the Earth's ecosystems and discuss solutions to environmental problems which affect the quality of life on this planet. Environmental Directions gives you the kind of information you need to help you participate in decisions impacting your community, the nation, and the world. Now, here's your host, Nancy Perlman.
Hello. We're going to be talking about blue whales with my guest, Hugh Pearson. He is director and producer of the IMAX 3D film Blue Whales: Return of the Giants. He is also director of Oceanic Films. He has formerly been producer at the BBC Natural History Unit and Silverback Films, and has worked on the Blue Planet series and Our Planet series. He is a winner of Emmy Awards and also of the British Academy of Film and Television Awards. Welcome. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you for introducing me, and pleasure to speak with you as well.
I just saw a most gorgeous, beautiful presentation, film, moving tale of blue whales. They're incredible animals. We used to have about 300,000 of them on the planet, but now they're down to 15,000?
Yeah, that's true. We have a rather sorry history with blue whales. As you said, the population globally used to be about 300,000 individuals. But then during the whaling years, when humans went out and hunted whales for their oil and their blubber, they reduced the blue whale population down to potentially even hundreds, maybe a few thousands. There were genuine concerns that we'd driven these magnificent animals to extinction, which is a tragedy. But fortunately, with the Save the Whale movement, which people of a certain age will remember, the world came together and stopped commercial whaling, and blue whales were finally protected in the 60s. And the good news is they're starting to recover. They've recovered from a population of just a few thousand up to 15,000, and they're now starting to repopulate areas where they haven't been seen for centuries or for decades. It's a tragic sort of past. It's actually a hopeful future and an optimistic future for blue whales and all the great whales, because they are coming back.
In fact, your film crew followed some scientists in two major areas. One, the Gulf of California in Mexico, where the whales are giving birth, and yet you had scientists try to find a whale in the Seychelles in the Indian Ocean. And it took them almost 3 weeks before they could find the return of a blue whale.
Yeah, that's correct. We'd heard these sort of reports, almost rumors, like fishermen's tales, that the blue whales had been sighted in the Seychelles, which was a new one to me. And when I spoke to a scientist who held all the old whaling records, he told me something that just blew my mind. He dug down, and in the 60s, the Soviet whaling fleet were hunting illegally. It's only when the Iron Curtain came down that they released their true records, and they showed that in 1 month, in November 1964, the Soviet whaling fleet killed over 500 blue whales in a single month in the waters around the Seychelles. Everyone assumed that they'd wiped out the population. But then we heard these whispers, these rumors that people are seeing blue whales, and that obviously was tantalizing. So we put together an expedition, say, with the scientists, and we spent 3 weeks scouring the seas around the Seychelles. And eventually, towards the end of the trip, we finally saw them. So it was a real sort of expedition, a sort of a mammoth effort. But we found them, and we've confirmed that the blue whales are once again roaming the seas around the Seychelles, which again is a fantastic good news story, which we need in these dark times. So yeah, blue whales look like they're coming back in the Seychelles. There's a lot more we need to find out. How many are there? Which population have they joined to? What are they doing there? As with everything with blue whales, there are so many mysteries, so many questions. But yeah, I'm very pleased and hugely relieved to say that at the end of our expedition, we did, in fact, find the blue whales in the Seychelles, which was great news.
How many species of whales are there, and why is it called a blue whale?
Whales are divided into two groups. The baleen whales, like blue whales, humpback whales, and right whales. And I think there's about 17 or 20 baleen whales. And then there's the toothed whales, which are basically the dolphins, which cover all the dolphins, and then killer whales. Sperm whales are actually part of the toothed dolphin family, and there is a lot of very obscure beaked whales which are part of that family. I'm guessing about 100 species of whales and dolphins, but please don't hold me to that because I could be wildly wrong. Blue whales, the color of their skin is gray when you see them above water, but when they're just below the water, when they're coming up, they take on the color of the oceanic water, the oceanic blue, and they are the most beautiful azure glowing blue, and that's what you see when they come up close to the boat or from a drone. they just almost glow, and it's just this most magical, beautiful color. It's my favorite color, and it gives me goosebumps whenever I think about it, because that's what I think is most beautiful about blue whales is their color. And when you're in the water with them as well, when they're shallow, again, their gray skin takes on the color of the oceanic water. So if you can see them in clear water, they're just this beautiful blue, azure blue, shimmering color, which is just stunning.
The photography, the images were stunning. You showed a boat with the scientists in this clear ocean. It was just beautiful. Were you on another boat? Were you using drones? How did you get such incredibly beautiful pictures?
The key thing is a lot of time at sea. We spend a lot of time at sea working, battling through very bad conditions, and we film on the few days when the conditions are really good. So as with anything, you only see the good conditions in the movie. We had a lot of time both in the Gulf of California and Mexico, which is a stunning place, and you do get those glass calm seas, which allow you to see the whale. And one of the key tools we had was the drone. I don't think we could make this film without drones, because when you're on a boat, you see the blue whale below and you see a bit of its back and the tail, but you really just look at the tip of the iceberg. You can't really see what's going on from the boat. But you put the drone up and it's just like, that's the blue whale, that's what it's doing. So drones were a key tool in allowing us to make this film. And also we had a highly experienced, highly specialized wildlife film crew who are used to working at sea, used to working with whales, because another key talent is reading the animals, reading the behavior, knowing when to film, when to leave them alone, and what they're going to do. And so as well as the creative and the artistic aspect of trying to compose and create a beautiful image, which I think we've done, there's the sort of like the wildlife expertise, which the scientists also bring as well, which enable us to capture the stunning images that we did.
Because the film is in 3D, I felt as though I could touch the whales, the beautiful animals in the ocean, and you showed them blowing the air out, and yet they were so close. And of course, in reality, tourists should never get close to them, and I know that has been a problem down in the Gulf of California and Mexico, where tourist boats have gotten too close, not necessarily to the blue whales, but to the humpback whales and the other animals that are in that location.
Yeah, you're right. We did get some lovely close-up images. We were working with the scientists under special permits that we were allowed to get closer than tourists are. But also we had some long telephoto lenses which allow us to stay away from the animals and get those close-up shots, even with the drone. So at all times, one of the keys to wildlife filming is to not influence the animal and not affect the animal. As soon as you start disturbing an animal, a blue whale, you can't get any good shots of it. So we're very sort of meticulous about ensuring that we're not influencing or disturbing the animals at all, and we use all our field craft, our telephoto long lenses to enable us to capture their natural behavior from a distance where we're not disturbing them.
In the Gulf of California, you were with a scientist who has spent almost 30 years documenting the whales. She has pictures of them because their skin is like fingerprints. She can identify them. She could actually identify a new mother who she had recorded as a calf 20 years before.
Yeah, that's right. That's Dr. Diane Gendron. She's an amazing lady. She's actually been down in the Gulf of California. She's been there for 33 continuous seasons. The blue whales come in each winter for a few months, and she hasn't missed a single winter in 33 years. So she has an incredible knowledge and passion for the blue whales. And as you said, each blue whale is identifiable by a pattern on its back. And over those 33 years, Diane has identified, I think it's over 800 blue whales now. Some of them are regulars. She knows them very well. We had an amazing piece of luck when we were there because, as you said, the calf that we were filming, we found a mother and calf, which was great news for us. Then Diane identified the mother, and she knew the mother, and she looked back through her back catalogue, which is kind of like a Facebook of blue whales, and she realised that she also knew the grandmother. And that was only the third time in all those years that Diane's been researching blue whales that she's seen of what's called a third generation. She was very emotional, very touched by it, and it was great for us just to sort of be able to portray sort of the depth of knowledge and the depth of experience and how Diane knows these animals so intimately, and she knows who's related to who, she knows their family history, she knows their behavior. She really has a connection with these whales like no one else I know, and it's based on the fact she spent more time with those animals than anyone else ever.
Blue whales and other whales can travel thousands of miles. They have the entire ocean world on this planet. available to them. And yet they come back to the same area to give birth. They go back to the Antarctic to breed, to eat, and survive. Is there any place on the earth you can't find a blue whale if we allowed them to recover and bring back their numbers?
If we allow them to recover to their pre-whaling numbers, that would be fantastic. And by my calculations, that should be in about 50 years' time, because their populations double roughly every decade, so they're on an exponential curve. The blue whales in the Gulf of California, they spend the winter there and they have their calves there, and then in the summertime they go to feeding grounds off the coast of California, Oregon, and off Costa Rica. These blue whales don't go down to Antarctica. That's a different population. There are a number of different populations around the world, but fundamentally, we know very little about them. They're the largest animal in the world, but they're also one of the most mysterious. The Gulf of California is one of only 2 known birthing grounds for blue whales, and the other is Chile. We don't know where the rest of them give birth, which is a staggering fact considering it's a fairly fundamental piece of information, but they are very rare. As I said, they live way out to sea. They spend 99% of their lives underwater. So for us to find out anything about them is incredibly hard. So they are mysterious. But there's probably more places on Earth where you can't find them. Because generally, not on planet Earth, or not on Earth, because they generally live far out to sea. So for us, the Gulf of California is rare because they're close to shore. Off LA, I mean, you have got one of the best places in the world to see blue whales just off the coast of LA and Monterey. It's rare. There's a good population there, and they come close to shore. Places like Antarctica, in the middle of the Indian Ocean, middle of the Pacific Ocean, they're there, we think, but finding them is really, really hard because they're very elusive creatures of the high seas.
It is amazing because, as you say, they are the largest animal that has ever lived, and we have to say that means that they were bigger than the dinosaurs, which we always think of as very big. And to get an idea of their size, they can grow longer than a jetliner, and their tongue alone weighs as much as an elephant, and most people know what an elephant looks like, and that's a pretty big, heavy animal.
Yeah, the stats on blue whales are staggering, and it's really hard to get across the scale of them. As you said, their tongue is the size of an elephant. Their tail fluke, their tail fin, is up to 25 feet across. They're roughly the size of 2 to 3 school buses, which everyone will know in America, the yellow school buses. If you put 2 of those back to bumper, a blue whale will be bigger than that. And I've been fortunate enough to be in the water with them and look at a blue whale eye to eye from within about 10 feet. And that's when you really get a sense of the scale of them. The best way I can describe that is when you're boarding a plane to do one of your city hops, a Boeing 737, you're going up the gangplank and you're just about to go on board through the little sort of the door. Look up and down that plane. That's about the size of a blue whale.
The international community has created a whaling moratorium. Is that pretty safe, or are whalers still trying to get permission to kill more whales?
The ban on whaling is pretty safe, but it only applies to those members who are members of the IWC, which is the International Whaling Commission. Japan has opted out, and I think Iceland have now stopped whaling. Norway maybe do a bit, but not much, but Japan do a bit. So commercial whaling is not a problem. What is a greater problem is accidental whaling. A lot of whales are killed by ship strike. There's thousands of giant cargo ships crisscrossing our ocean, and they hit whales. And for the North Atlantic right whale, which lives off the coast of northeast US and Canada, they have a real problem with ship strike. It's a very low population. A lot of the whales are either killed by ships or they get entangled in fishing gear. To my mind, whaling is a heinous crime. I abhor it. That actually isn't the biggest threat to whales these days. A bigger threat is ship strike, entanglement in fishing gear, and noise pollution.
How do we solve those problems?
There's some very good work done about the ship strike. What they're looking to do now is to move shipping lanes away from where the whales are, up the coast of California. One of the big feeding areas of blue whales is right in one of the shipping lanes, and now they're setting up, trying to monitor where the whales are and in real time move the shipping lanes. The scientists are working with the Port of LA to try and get this dynamic shipping lane movement in a response to where the whales are. Not ideal, but we have to be realistic about that. And then fishing gear, again, we're just trying to reduce the amount of fishing gear in the ocean. And the big problem is fishing pots, because you've only got a line from the bottom to the top, and the whales get entangled in that. There are some heroic scientists out there who are looking to disentangle whales when they do get trapped, but that's not solving the problem. So I would say, to my simplistic mind, a better solution would be to have less fishing gear, and more protected areas where there is no fishing, which would allow the whales and the whole oceans to recover. fundamentally, I think the story of the great whales is a positive one. They are all recovering. Humpback whales are nearly back to their pre-whaling days. Southern right whales are doing well. So from a very low of 30 to 60 years ago when we decimated the whale population, the great whales are coming back and they are recovering. That's what I want people to think of. It's a positive story. It's not perfect, but the recovery of the great whales, including blue whales, is a positive story, and it shows what happens when we leave nature alone. We stop killing things, they do a lot better. So that's what I'd like people to take away, is the positive story and how that should inspire people for conservation going forward, both in the ocean and on land, is just to leave nature alone.
We've heard about the garbage patches in the oceans. Sometimes garbage the size of Texas are floating around, and we've heard about the plastic. Is this a threat to whales?
Yeah, plastic pollution is much talked about, and there has been some studies saying that blue whales and other whales will take on microplastics. Plastic pollution is bad, but the biggest problem in the ocean is overfishing. By far and away, that's a bigger threat to the oceans than plastic pollution. It's just plastic pollution is better known by the public. It's an easier issue to communicate. But overfishing is the big issue in the ocean. So that's what I would like people to address, is overfishing as well as plastic pollution. I hope that overfishing gets as much attention as plastic pollution does.
On your website, bluewhalesfilm.com, you have a lot of modules and other activities for educators and other information. They can also see a trailer of the film, but you encourage them to go see the IMAX film and not watch it on a computer screen?
Yeah, absolutely. The website, bluewhalesfilm.com, has got a huge amount of information for educators and teachers just to try and inspire kids. And there's lots of interactive games in there. There's lots of videos. So there's a wealth of information there to help educators and teachers and parents to really inspire kids and teach them about the wonders of blue whales.
Amazing animals. It's so wonderful that you have filmed them so that those who cannot get close to them on the ocean, cannot view them in real life, can feel as though they are almost there, because your IMAX 3D film is stunning. And we'll talk more with Hugh Pearson when we return in a moment about his film Blue Whales, Return of the Giants.
Environmental Directions with Nancy Pearlman continues with further discussion of the world's critical ecological issues. For more information, you may call 310-559-9160 or go to www.ecoprojects.org. Now, here's Nancy.
I'm speaking with Hugh Pearson. He is director of Oceanic Films and has created a fantastic film, Blue Whales, Return of the Giants. It's an IMAX film in 3D. How do you create that? Because filming is tough on the ocean in the first place, and 3D and the IMAX cameras are gigantic.
Yeah, you're right. It's only recent developments in technology that have allowed us to make this film, because it's a 3D film, so you have all the glory of seeing and experiencing blue whales and other animals in 3D, but we actually capture the film in 2D. Nowadays, it's better to capture it in 2D, knowing you're going to make it 3D, and then what we do is what's called post-dimensionalize it. And there's some very clever people who do things I still don't understand, but they spend a lot of time and quite a lot of money, and they create three-dimensional images from the two-dimensional images that we film. So we have to film it in a certain way for them to enable them to do that. But that's the only way that we could make a 3D film on blue whales, because it's simply not possible to try and film a blue whale with those massive 3D IMAX cameras. Nowadays, we can use the very high-quality 8K cinematic cameras are small enough that we can film a blue whale with those. And as I said, we post-dimensionalize it and make it 3D. And I've literally just walked out of a theatre in London, the Science Museum, having watched the film in 3D. And it just elevates it to a whole different level. And it is genuinely like you're there with blue whales, like you're underwater with them. And as I said, I've been very fortunate to dive with blue whales, to look at them eye to eye, which very, very few people will be lucky enough to do. But actually seeing it on the giant screen in 3D, it genuinely feels like you're underwater with blue whales. And I think that's just a fantastic experience.
You are an Emmy and BAFTA award winner. You've worked on series such as Blue Planet and Our Planet, produced with the BBC Natural History Unit and Silverback Films. And of course, BBC has a lot of money available to get incredible nature shots. What was the difference in working on this film about blue whales and the other nature films that you have worked with?
That's a very good question. One of the key things was the format, the canvas we were making it for, because the previous films I've worked on have been for television, broadcast, and streaming, which people are watching on a conventional TV screen, although they're getting nice and big now. What we did with this blue whales film, we created it specifically for the giant screen, the IMAX market, which is that massive great screen, because I was very passionate that I've always wanted to make a film on blue whales, and to my mind, you have to put the biggest animal in the world on the biggest screen in the world. And so we were able to get the funding together from HHMI, Tanglebank Studios, and a grant from the National Science Foundation, which enabled us to fund this film, to go out and film blue whales for the big canvas. And I think that was the key difference. It's a slightly different grammar of telling stories. Also, it's very much aimed at the sort of educational market. These IMAX films are in science museums, aquariums, and so a lot of kids go there. And that's the key audience, is sort of high school kids. So we very much pitched the story and the film at that audience, just to try and inspire the next generation of marine biologists and whale scientists.
I actually saw it on the 7-story screen at the IMAX Theater at the California Science Center here in Los Angeles in Exposition Park with a lot of young children from the summer camps, and they were enthralled, as I was, by the images and seeing these incredible animals. Of course, it's wonderful that this is available here in Southern California, even though I'm talking to you in London. The film, though, focuses on the whale, but we cannot forget that there are a lot of other animals in the ocean, and you got some beautiful shots of other animals, including cetacea like the dolphins, who would be near the whales, sharks, orcas, sea lions, turtles. Are the whales generally found alone, or are these other animals generally in their vicinity?
Yeah, in both places, both locations we filmed, the Gulf of California, Mexico, and the Seychelles. Marine life, animals, they're obviously very good at finding food and finding hotspots. And in the open ocean, it's a big blue desert, and it has oases of life. That's what we're always looking for as filmmakers, because the animals are so good at finding it. But quite often, where you'll find the blue whales is where you'll find a lot of the other animals, like the dolphins, sperm whales, turtles and such like. And the same in the Gulf of California. It's a real hotspot. So quite often where you'll find blue whales, you'll find a lot of other species like the dolphins and sea lions and pelicans as well, that albeit feed on different types of food, they're all in the same area because they're rich, productive areas. It is like an oasis at sea, and all the animals find those places.
You also showed in your film the krill that the blue whale eats. But you can't find krill everywhere. As you say, a lot of the ocean is sort of a desert in terms of not having a lot of life. So they have to go where they eat this very small, microscopic animal and put them through their baleen?
Yeah, I mean, krill is actually one of the most abundant animals on the planet, because where it lives, it thrives in huge numbers. So wherever you find blue whales, they feed exclusively on krill, so there's going to be krill. But krill mostly lives deep down. It spends most of its time 200-300 feet beneath the surface, and the blue whales dive down and feed on it there. Every now and then, krill comes to the surface for a reason we don't really know, and the blue whales feed at the surface, and that enables us to get those shots of blue whales feeding and the shots of krill, because even filming krill is incredibly hard. They're amazing animals at finding and consuming krill, and that's why scientists believe blue whales are so big, is because the krill patches can be thousands of miles apart, so large animals migrate more efficiently. So that's one reason why the blue whale is so big, so it can literally transverse oceans. And then when it gets there, it has this gargantuan mouth, which enables them to really make hay when they find these big swarms of krill, because generally where you find krill, there's a lot of it. So that's why they think blue whales are so big, so they can efficiently find the patches of krill, and when they do find them, really make the most of it. And they estimate that these animals can eat 15 tons of krill a day, which is a mind-boggling amount. So like 40 million individual krill per day, if you can imagine that.
That is a very large number, and it's hard to imagine that. It's also hard to imagine the importance of the whale poop. And you had a segment talking about and showing how their poop helps fertilize the oceans.
Yeah, this is something that's quite a recent phenomenon, and the scientists have discovered it. It's only in the last decade or so. It's called the whale pump. What they've realized is that for a lot of the ocean, it is actually quite nutrient poor at the surface, and so there's not much life. And what blue whales do, and all the whales and other dolphins and all marine life, is they quite often feed deep. As I said, krill often lives deep down, 200-300 feet, which is below the effect of the sunlight. The blue whales feed deep, and they come to the surface, and the surface is where they tend to poop. And being as a big animal, they do a big poop. And they release all this fertilizer at the surface. It's very rich in iron and other elements that are scarce in the surface. Once you scatter their feces, their poop, within the sunlight, you have this magic ingredient of sunlight and fertilizer, and you get sort of like a flush of life. It fuels the phytoplankton, which are tiny floating plants, and the phytoplankton feed the krill, which in turn feed the blue whales. So actually, funny enough, nature always gets it right. The more whales you have, the more poop you have at the surface, and then that fuels the growth of these floating plants, which then feeds krill, fish, and everything else. So what they found is the presence of whales actually enhances dramatically the natural habitat. Japanese whalers once said, we have to kill the whales because they're eating all our fish, they're competing with us. In fact, the opposite is true. The more whales we have, the more productivity you have in the ocean, and the better life there is for the animals and for the fishermen as well. So whales, by this process called the whale pump, they're really important ecosystem engineers of helping enhance the productivity of their habitat, the ocean.
As you mentioned, the knowledge of these animals that have been on this planet is really limited. How much do we really know about them?
The scientists, they're working really hard. Sometimes they're putting these suction tags on whales, which allow them to film the whales and also record their song. We can put these satellite tags with like little GPS tags on them, which we can track their movements for up to a year. The acoustics, the sounds, the songs they make are also very revealing. In the Seychelles or in the Indian Ocean, scientists think there are distinct what they call acoustic populations, because the whales in Sri Lanka, they have a different song to the whales in Madagascar or Oman or Australia. So it's a bit like a dialect. Humans have dialects. They found that blue whales have dialects. So what they've been doing is they've been deploying these long-term hydrophones at the bottom of the ocean that can passively record them so people don't have to be there, and then they crunch this massive data. They can try and figure out which whales are traveling to which populations just by listening to their song.
In fact, your film starts with the sound of the whale rumbles, as you might call them. That travels quite a distance. How far can they hear these sounds and communicate underwater? Because we also have a lot of pollution in the ocean, the noise from the ships, not just the threat of whales running into ships, but the noise underneath must be horrible for the whales.
Yeah, blue whales and most marine mammals, they live in an acoustic world. The water visibility is normally fairly poor, so vision isn't much good to them. So they see, navigate, and find each other and find their prey using sound, using acoustics. Noise pollution from ships and mining and oil exploration is a real problem for all whales, a lot of cetaceans, a lot of marine mammals, because it's like trying to live your life next to a freeway. It's pretty stressful for them. So that's a big concern for an animal that relies on sound. And they estimate that the blue whale songs can be heard by other blue whales hundreds, if not thousands of miles away. So there's courtship calls where the males are sort of presumably advertising themselves to females. They have to advertise in a wide area because the oceans are big.
I am so thrilled that you did the film so that we could feel so close to them and learn how important they are on the planet and do our best to save them. You certainly had a fantastic crew to document this wonderful animal. Thank you so much for creating the film. Thank you for making it available. I encourage everybody to go see it. Thank you for being my guest.
It's been a pleasure. I'm always very happy to talk about blue whales. It's a passion of mine.
Thank you. I have been speaking with Hugh Pearson. He is the director and producer of Blue Whales, Return of the Giants, an IMAX 3D film, and director of Oceanic Film. I'm Nancy Pearlman. Thank you very much for joining us, and do tune in again next week.
If you would like free information about these environmental issues, go to www.ecoprojects.org or call 310-559-9160. Environmental Directions with your host, Nancy Pearlman, is a community affairs program of the nonprofit organization Educational Communications and this station.